Chainsaw Man got an absolute stellar adaptation for its first episode. But there were some things that could use some improvement.
Are you ever satisfied?
The shots and angles used were all very reminiscent of old movies, and this is very in line with Fujimoto, the author, being a huge cinema buff, so it was nice to see that make it into the anime, and there are a plethora of actual references in the opening itself, where they basically just rotoscoped over real scenes, as you can see here, but more on that in my OP analysis video coming soon.
No one cares!
While Bleach may have had the better lighting and coloring, Chainsaw Man definitely knocked it out of the park with its fluidity and movement, as well as its shot composition, as already mentioned. The decision to go with fluid scenes and movements, as if every scene were seamlessly flowing into the next one, was absolutely brilliant on the director's behalf. The source material is so wacky that you'd expect the visuals to match that with very expressive, wacky animation in the same vein as One Punch Man, but instead it subverts your expectations and delivers a more subdued take, with Denji primarily moving like a normal human would in most shots. It's very in line with what the actual manga would have done, so it shows perfectly how well they understand what they're adapting. I'd fuck this thing. For the most part, the first episode was also a more one-to-one adaptation, but there were a few scenes added, and overall, the entire episode was enhanced to the point where you'd prefer this over the manga anyway. The tone was a lot more somber and depressing in the anime, whereas in the manga, it was more, what a fucking loser. It was filled with a lot of wide establishing shots, which really gave it a more cinematic feel, and the voices were near perfect. Denji's voice actor did a stellar job, as did Makima's, and there was only one scene where I thought Denji's voice actor could have done better. The OST was likewise a great fit, but I do think it was a bit lackluster and unfitting during the big fight scene, but when Denji got stabbed, it was mwah. However, the tone was what I was most worried about, and this episode didn't assuage me of my worries since it was mostly taken seriously and depressing, but the OP fills me with so much hope because it was absolutely stellar. There are some odd bits of CG in it, and a lot of rotoscoping because they're copying real movies for references as said, but the tone was on point. Denji and Power acting silly, the movie theater scene displaying every character's personality perfectly, I'd let Makima peg me, and Denji on a fucking leash. God, I wish that were me. It understood the silly aspect of the series so well, and even took into account Fujimoto's own taste in cinema and melded them together into a perfect blend. It was 10 out of 10, and this series will be amazing if the rest of the anime is just like that OP. The song itself was nice, but the ED was leagues better in that regard because they did exactly what I wanted and had the singer chant Chainsaw Man really sillily, but the rest of the vocals and instruments were really good to boot. It really should have been the OP because it fits the series perfectly, but because it's the ED, it's unfortunately the only time we'll hear it since they'll be changing it every episode. I don't think any of the other ones are going to be able to top it, but I'm hopeful that mommy will walk me. The only downside to this episode was the big moment where Chainsaw Man is revealed. The lead up to it is great and emotional, and the transition from the flashback to Denji's body being stitched together is great. The sound effects were also good, and the sound for the gore when he's cutting up the zombie devil was fantastic. It was very gritty and really sold the violence of the series, but god damn does this look like shit. Why they opted to go with CG for such a pivotal scene is beyond me, and the shots where Denji is yelling he'll kill them all and his fighting in general don't look bad, but this initial scene where he emerges looks really, really bad, and the scene with him looking around after defeating the devil is even worse. It looks awful, and I'm hopeful it was just for this one scene because everything else I've seen seems to imply that the CG will be very sparse. CG on things like crowds of zombies is expected, but going in and out of CG for Denji's chainsaw head is very jarring and just looks downright awful in some scenes, which really takes you out of it. Outside of that though, I think MAPPA, for once, did a stellar job in animating this first episode. Better CG incorporation and styling so that it doesn't stick out like they did when he attacked the zombie devil would be a lot better, and something I hope they do for future episodes. And Denji's voice actor as Chainsaw Man could use some work, as well as the OST during the more intense battle scenes, but those things are easily fixable, unlike something like getting the tone, writing, or pacing wrong. At the end of the day, I think the staff behind this project are going to knock it out of the fucking park, and I can't wait for more episodes on what has quickly become one of my favorite shounen. So click here if you want to see my other favorite.